You ever notice how trouble never just knocks on your door? It sneaks in wearing a polite smile, holding a clipboard, acting like it owns the place? That's exactly how my whole showdown with the Lakeside Bluffs HOA began. I'd carved out a quiet spot just beyond the gates of their picture-perfect suburb, running my little vineyard, minding my own, and doing it my way because, lucky for me, my land was grandfathered in. No HOA, no rules about paint colors, no board committee chairs snooping around my grapevines. Freedom tastes a whole lot better when nobody's measuring your grass with a ruler or telling you what counts as community-approved decor. I thought I'd outsmarted the system until Greg Wallace showed up. Now, Greg, let me paint you a picture. Tall guy, late 50s, probably bench-pressed donuts for 30 years as a sheriff's deputy, judging by the faded patch half hanging off his jacket. He had that stance, like he still heard the radio static in his sleep, just itching for a call to come through. First time I saw him, he was pacing the entrance to Lakeside Bluffs like the president had hired him for border security. I thought, okay, new neighbor, little high-strung, but harmless. Next thing I know, he's stopping teenagers on skateboards, demanding IDs, threatening to write citations for going too fast in a cul-de-sac. I later found out he was Community Oversight Chair, which is HOA speak for sheriff without a badge or a jurisdiction. It didn't take long for Greg to take an unhealthy interest in my slice of heaven. I caught him more than once lurking near my property line, binoculars out, just doing a safety sweep. I just stared him down, and he'd nod, all serious, like we'd struck some silent deal. He never actually set foot on my land, but the message was clear. He thought he was in charge. Not long after, the cops came rolling in, said they'd gotten a tip about weapons in plain view. I walked them right up to my locked cabinet. You'd have to be Inspector Gadget to spot it from the street. The officer apologized, left. A couple days later, another anonymous call, this time about alcohol odors. I mean, for crying out loud, I run a vineyard. That's grapes in fermentation, not an underground distillery. At that point, I started getting nervous. I rigged up extra cameras, started keeping a log of every little encounter. Something in my gut said this wasn't going to burn out. It was just getting started. Greg's next move was to show up with a clipboard, acting like the king of compliance. Claimed he needed to inspect my structures for community safety. I told him he could turn right back around and go practice his authority somewhere he actually had it. He tried to pull the emergency jurisdiction card. I laughed him off my driveway. He left mumbling about irregularities and how I failed to cooperate. That's when I realized this wasn't about neighborhood pride. It was about control, and I was the wild card Greg couldn't deal with. Over the next week, the HOA upped their game from nosy to straight-up creepy. First, I found a camera mounted on the utility pole across the road, aimed square at my gate. Then another, half hidden in the trees. HOA sticker on the side, like that made it legal. Next, I get a letter from Karen Manning, the HOA president, and I swear, this woman could outsmile a shark. She'd decided my property, by virtue of being next door, was now part of their expanded observation perimeter. Meaning, they just made up a boundary and decided it was law. The letter was a masterclass in doublespeak, said I'd be expected to comply with occasional, non-invasive property assessments. I sent it straight to my lawyer, who rolled her eyes and told me it wasn't worth the ink. But the very next day, 2 HOA volunteers showed up, pastel polos, clipboards, trying to peer over my fence. I met them at the gate, smiled like the wolf in the story, and let them know if they didn't turn around, they'd be part of the next environmental impact study, if you catch my drift. But Greg kept coming. Morning, night, whenever he thought I wouldn't notice. One night, my motion light snapped on, and there he was, just standing there, letting me see him. Not subtle. And then weird stuff started happening. Fresh boot prints inside my fence, my power flickering, network dropping for minutes, my cameras offline. Logs showed someone from a nearby network had tried to hack in. Guess who lived next door with his shiny community badge? I doubled my security, hardwired everything. If they wanted to play, I'd make him work for it. But it just got weirder. Flyers started appearing around the neighborhood. Safety alert. Non-compliant property identified. My gate, blurred out in a photo. Claims of unlicensed operations, hazardous materials, refusing inspections by HOA safety agents. Yeah, safety agents. That's when even my UPS driver started asking if I was under investigation. Fire department shows up next, then code enforcement, all from anonymous tips. It was harassment, plain and simple, and it was coordinated. Lucky for me, I wasn't new to this kind of war. I'd been a detective, paperwork, intimidation, games of chicken with bureaucrats, all old hat. Only difference now was I was the target. But I wasn't alone for long. Travis, a quiet HOA board member, slipped me a warning. Greg had something on Karen, financial, maybe more. He'd overheard them arguing. And suddenly, this felt bigger than petty neighbor drama. A couple nights later, I found a USB stick jammed in my outdoor camera. Plugged it into an old laptop, loaded with malware, designed to hijack and overwrite my security feed. That's when I called in a favor from an old PI buddy, Kellen. Gave him everything, the stick, photos, docs. We started digging. Turns out Greg and the county sheriff, Troy McKenna, were old pals, best man at each other's weddings, cover-ups for complaints, the whole 9 yards. Greg wasn't just playing cowboy. He was protected, and he knew it. Then the script flipped. I threw a barbecue for a few friends, nothing wild, just good food, music, a little wine. And that's when the cops showed up, sirens blaring, tactical van out front. You could feel the tension snap. But guess who was leading the charge? Andy Morales, a former colleague. He recognized me, called it off, told his guys to pack it up. Greg was across the street, face red, fuming. Andy told me the tip had come through internal channels, flag priority. That meant Greg, or someone high up, was pulling strings. I'd had enough. Filed an official complaint, stacked with evidence, video, logs. Got a canned response. No misconduct found. McKenna's signature at the bottom. So I went public. Held a press conference right outside the HOA center. Media, neighbors, the whole lot. Laid out every dirty detail. Surveillance, malware, financial kickbacks to Greg's shell company. The fake expansion zone letter. The news ate it up. By sundown, resignations started rolling in. By morning, the county was investigating the HOA for civil overreach and criminal misconduct. But we weren't done. Kellen and I got a warrant. The state sent in a task force, raided Greg's place at dawn. They found enough to make your skin crawl. Illegal cameras, logs, maps of the neighborhood, unregistered weapons, surveillance inside people's homes. Karen tried to run, caught at the edge of town with a burner phone and cash. Sheriff McKenna got served next. The courtroom was standing room only. Evidence on display, emails read aloud. Karen ordering Greg to make me look unstable. Greg blackmailing her to cover his tracks. Jury didn't need long. Greg got 24 years, Karen 18. Restitution to every neighbor they targeted. The HOA was gutted. Fines, audits, new oversight. The judge looked right at me when she awarded damages. $200,000. It wasn't just a win, it was a clean sweep. I walked out. Someone handed me a mug with my face on it. Defender of the Vineyard. I kept it. Couldn't help but laugh. 6 months later, life settled. The vineyard thrived. The sun felt warmer, and nobody but the birds watched my fence. The new HOA board, all fresh faces, turned meetings into honest conversations, not witch hunts. I never joined, but they kept inviting me as their local legend. I even hung a new sign, private property, cameras on, sheriffs by appointment only. And, for good measure, no HOA jurisdiction beyond this point. Travis stopped by, cracked up, toasted with me under the arbor. The trial made waves, sparked debates about HOAs, power, privacy, and what community should mean. I rebuilt my south fence, started workshops for folks who wanted to know their rights, and, for the first time in years, threw a harvest festival. No permits, no clipboards, just laughter and wine under a golden sunset. As I stood up on a hay bale that night, glass in hand, I looked around and realized this wasn't just my win. This was proof. Proof that one stubborn neighbor, with a little courage and a lot of receipts, could beat the system and maybe, just maybe, make it better for everyone. So, what do you think? Was I right to stand my ground? Or did I just pour gasoline on a suburban dumpster fire? I'd love to hear what you'd have done. Share your thoughts below, and hey, keep your fences mended and your neighbors honest.